Hello chess friends and welcome to your Zad of Chess channel and welcome to the round 3 of the Tata Steel Chess Masters in 2025. So round 3 was a derby day today because we had today two great matches. First of all, the big match between the world champion Gukesh against Fabiano Caruana, and also the great Indian derby between Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa and Arjun Erigaisi. The first thing that I wanted to show you from this round 3 is actually this position from the game between Gukesh and Fabiano Caruana. Gukesh here with the white pieces and Fabi with the black pieces. And in this particular position, the players agreed to a draw, which in my opinion was a little bit too rushed from Gukesh's perspective. The position is hard to play. I'm not saying it's not, but here with the bishop pair, I think Gukesh should have pushed a little bit further. The position should have put more pressure against Fabi, especially because of this dangerous dark square bishop. There is also the c5 weakness. I think a little bit too rushed decision by Gukesh, but okay, it's of course his strategy how to perform in this event. Of course, a draw against Fabiano Caruana is not something that should worry Gukesh, because we know Fabi has settled himself now in chess history always as the second best chess player in the community. Of course, after Magnus Carlsen, Fabi is a tough one to battle, so maybe Gukesh didn't want to risk anything, but I would really love this position to be played further, especially because of this very dangerous progressive plan by black with the potential g4 move, and also with the beautiful bishop pair here by white. But okay, we're now analyzing the other derby. As I said, the Indian derby between Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa and Arjun Erigaisi. In this tournament, it didn't work out so far for Arjun. Only one draw and one losing game, and Praggnanandhaa has already a great win with the black pieces yesterday against Pentala Hare Krishna, and also a big draw against Nodirbek Abdulsatorov. Nodirbek is also playing a great tournament so far, and this is the game that we analyze today. This game, I think, shows the problems of structural weaknesses. We know that in chess, structural weaknesses can be a weak pawn or a weak square, and when you have provoked somehow weakness in your opponent's position, then it's much easier to play the game. Then of course you can attack this weakness and then have a comfortable game. The player that has of course the structural weaknesses has to somehow defend this position. So let's see now what happened with white. Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa against his landsman Arjun Erigaisi opened with the move d4. Arjun's response was knight to f6. We have c4 e6, knight to f3, anti-Nimzo Indian stuff, and now after move d5 g3, the transposition into the beautiful Catalan opening, the sharpest of all Queen's Gambit declined. So we have now d takes c4, the open defense here by Arjun. Great choice for the beauty of the game. We want of course a sharp open battle between these two top grandmasters. Bishop to g2 c5, immediately challenging the center, and now Pragg simply castled and secured the king. Knight to c6, and now d takes c5, and this move creates, I think, a more positional game, a more equalish game. The dynamics of the game, I think, is a little bit splashed now. It's not such a dangerous position because now finally the queens are off the board. Bishop to c5 here, played by Arjun Erigaisi, and now of course here Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa has to now get his pawn back and simply attacks the pawn on c4. c3, good move by Arjun. Of course he will eventually lose the pawn, but at least he's creating now, as we mentioned, a structural weakness. Now from this point on, Praggnanandhaa has two weak pawns here, isolated pawns, and has now I think something to worry about, especially maybe later if, for instance, knight to d5 in some lines happens, then this weak pawn on c3 could be very a huge problem for him. But I would still evaluate this position as an equal one, because we have to also mention when Arjun traded off the queens on the d file, now Pragg has at least occupied the d file, has now at least many pieces out, has also now potential attacks on the b file, maybe by rook to b1. So he has open files, but has a slightly worse pawn structure now in the continuation of the game. Casting by Arjun, knight to e1, and now comes, I would dare to say, even the first really critical moment of the game. It's not a big deal what here Arjun did, but there are, I think, two choices. One is a more tactical approach, and one is a more solid approach for black. Here, Arjun played bishop to d7, which becomes now somehow a battle for the b7 pawn, which was maybe a little bit unnecessary for Arjun to go into this line. Maybe a better choice for him was to play rook to d8. And I love this line. It has been played many times in chess history. For instance, a beautiful game played by Leon Luke against Samuel Sevian, which ended in a draw back from 2024, in which Samuel Sevian played a rook to d8. And the issue for white with this move rook to d8 is then if you try knight to d3, there is now this, of course, move bishop to e7. You have to step back, and then if white goes for now the b file attack, there is now this beautiful move, knight to d5. And now suddenly white has to cover with bishop to b2, has to protect now the c3 pawn. But now with the move bishop to b2, the b file is locked by its own bishop. So now there's not so much tension on the b file, which is, I think, huge difference. If you watch now maybe the evaluation bar, you see also here that the engine in this particular position evaluates this position as equal. But after knight to e1 that Pragg played, Arjun played now bishop to d7. And as I said, it's not a mistake, it's not an inaccuracy or something, it's not a blunder or something, but it's much harder now for Arjun to play the game, because here Pragg goes immediately for this one. Now if you try something like knight to d5, we will play knight to e4 with an attack against this bishop. Still you have to step back, and then we can pick up simply the piece here on the pawn on b7. If after rook to b1, Arjun has to now play with the knight on the edge of the board, which is of course not good in many occasions. And now with knight to b3, here I would say white is slightly better, because it forces now reaction. After knight takes b3, a takes b3, and you see the target is still the b7 pawn. Arjun is pretty much forced now to play the move bishop to c6, and now after bishop to c6 and b takes c6, now suddenly Arjun has the structural weaknesses that Pragg had a couple of moves ago. And from this point on, again, I would say if both players play now the games like top engines, still I would dare to say this is a drawish position. But from human point of view, I think it's much easier now to play the game with the white pieces. You see knight to d3, first of all, an extra tempo here for Pragg, bishop to e7, bishop to e3. Here there is already a huge problem now about the a7 pawn. Arjun played rook from f to c8, bishop to c5, good move again by Pragg, king to f8. Arjun is of course trying to get the king closer, because the game is now not far away from a fully endgame stage, where the king is of course supposed to play in the center of the board. Rook to a1, now Pragg simply attacks this weakness, and now rook to c7. You see Arjun with this in this line has to even disconnect his rooks and has to now simply protect his weaknesses that I think he should not have in this stage of the game. Maybe there were, as I mentioned before, better lines for him to get out of this tactical mess. The issue is you cannot even play something like rook from c to b8. Seems tempting, but then with the b4, knight to, I don't know, knight to d5, rook to a3, bishop to c5, knight to c5. Again, white should be much better. e4 is going to happen, rook to a1, and suddenly you cannot even protect the pawn on a7 with rook to b7, because the knight is so powerful here on this score. Probably you will lose in a couple more moves the a pawn for sure. So here after move rook to a1, that's why rook to c7. The rooks are disconnected, and now also Pragg goes towards the center with the king. Knight to d7, bishop takes, king takes e7, and now rook to a3. Nothing spectacular, I would say, but it's the only move that makes sense here for white, simply going for the a7 weakness. c5, c4, rook to b7, and now rook from d to a1, simply attacking this weakness and going now with the king towards maybe this pawn, protecting it, maybe reroute the knight somehow on a better score. But we have to also mention that the knight on d7 is somehow stuck to the defense of the c5 pawn. So now Arjun is simply on the defensive side. Again, nothing spectacular is really going on, but unnecessary now here position maybe here for Arjun Erigaisi. What should you do now from Black's perspective? If you try maybe to go for this pawn on b3, seems also like a logical counter idea. The issue is now you cannot do this move because after rook takes a7 and rook takes b3, knight to c5 is going to happen. Pragg had everything under control here in this particular position. You're trying maybe rook to b1, rook takes b1, now king to g2, rook to d1. You have to now protect your knight, and now the king gets closer. You don't have to, of course, immediately pick up the knight here, and then after something like king to e8, now you finally trade off everything, and in this potential endgame, obviously, white is winning with this extra pawn on the c file. So that's why after rook from d to a1, a5, by Arjun. But you see now, a5 weak, c5 weak. It's now an easy game for Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa. King to e1, king to d6, knight to c1, king to a7, knight to a2. Good move against again by Pragg, going simply here for the e4 square, or also in some lines maybe here for the b5 square. King to c6, knight to c3, knight comes also here towards the queen side, and now f4. Knight to c8, knight to b5, hitting the rook. The rook has to, of course, stay now on the a file because of the weakness on a5. And now a good move by Pragg here, a rook to d1. And this move, rook to d1, is not allowing here Arjun to play the move a4. Then the rook to a1 could again happen. You're maybe trying, I don't know, knight to b6, but then king to d2. And once this king is getting closer, I think then white can play freely maybe here with his pieces. Also king to maybe, I don't know, king to c1, king to b2, and then knight to c3 could happen, knight to e4, and then maybe going for this pawns, because Black's position is somehow simply stuck to the defense of the weakness on a4. So rook to d1, good move here by Pragg. Knight to b6, we have now rook to a2, and now Arjun Erigaisi had, I think, a big chance here to equalize the game immediately, to make immediately a drawish position with the move a4. He has to play this move. He has to get rid of his weakness in a potential line. I don't know, rook from d to a1. Now you can go like this, and now if you, for instance, take the pawn on a4, then also see the pawn on c4 is hanging, and I would say this is now finally an equal position where both players have now this pass pawns, but I think Black's king is close enough to the action, and I would say top grandmaster level, this position should end with a draw. But instead of a4, Arjun played rook to f8, and this is not good because now rook to d6 is coming really in a spectacular way. The king has to even step back to b7, and now knight to c3. Now it's very easy for Pragg to target further the weaknesses. Knight to e4 in some lines is of course possible. So really messed up game here for Arjun Erigaisi. So what should you do? I've analyzed now a couple of moves that seemed logical to me. For instance, rook to king to c7, hitting the rook seems like a logical idea, but then you simply step back. Even if you go now again with your rook towards the a file, then knight to e4, as I said, very dangerous. You're trying maybe to get the king here. Now again we attack. Now this rook is coming in this way, and now if you try a4, there is the problem of the pawn on c5. So again, really a messy game here for Arjun Erigaisi. So this not working. Even if you try, I don't know, instead of rook king to c7, rook from f to a8, immediately instead of hitting the rook here, then rook to d1, and then after something like h5, king to f2. The issue is in this tactical sequence, you notice when the king is not on the c file, then it's not controlling anymore the progress of the rook on the d file, and there are some tactical threats like rook to d7, and again a messy game here for Black. But after knight to c3 and rook from a to a8 here that Arjun played, now Pragg actually makes a tiny little inaccuracy. He played now rook from a to d2. He changed a little bit direction of the attack. He should have simply stayed on his attack here on the a file with the move rook to d1, and then after something like, I don't know, rook to a6, maybe you're trying to defend again the pawn on a5, then knight to e4, and knight to e4 is then very dangerous if you try something like this. Then again, rook to d6, you're trying something like this, then knight to c5 comes with the threat against the rook. So suddenly the game is collapsing, I would say, here for Black. So instead of, I don't know, after rook to d1, you don't have to play rook rook to a6, you can maybe try h6, but then we simply attack this one, and again, in this tactical battle, white is winning the pawn, so I would say not a completely winning position, but very, very unpleasant here to handle for Arjun Erigaisi. So, as I said, here Pragg had the opportunity to play rook to d1. Unfortunately for him, he played now tiny little inaccuracy, which allows here, again, I would say, Arjun to play the move a4, to somehow split the pawns here. But Arjun again tried somehow to hold the position here also against the pawn on c5. Rook to a2, now finally again by Pragg. Pragg realizes that he had some issues, and now he's going for the line that we have discussed. Now he's finally going for the pawn on a5. Rook to a7, we have rook from d to a1, and now again, in order to somehow stay in the game, maybe a4, you have to play knight to a4 and hope for the best in this particular position. h5, and then, I don't know, rook to d8, holding somehow the position with the situation where you're down a pawn. Maybe this was the way to go for Arjun, but he went now with rook from f to a8. He tried now to protect finally this pawn, but now a good move here by Pragg. Knight to b5, rook to a6. Now comes the check, and you see Pragg won a pawn, won a very, very important pawn. And what's the huge problem, that black is still continuing the game with his weaknesses on the a file and also on the c file. So suddenly it becomes really, really a one-way ticket in white's favor. Knight to d7. Look at this. Knight to g5. Very easy now to play the position for Pragg. Knight to f3 and knight to e4. Of course, Pragg is now trying to trade off everything, and now king to f2. Good moves here by Pragg, simply centralizing knight. Great move again here by Pragg. Knight to e4, again simply targeting many weaknesses in black's camp. E takes f4, g takes f4, rook to e8, knight to c5. This pawn is protected, so a very, very bad game now for Arjun Erigaisi. Rook to c6, knight to d3. Arjun is trying to do something, but now a good move again by Pragg. This discovered attack doesn't mean anything because you get a couple of checks, but now there's simply no good check. The king is very well placed, it's perfectly fine, and now after rook to h2, knight to f2, Pragg protects everything here in this position. g5, and now rook to a5. This is very, very game over. Two connected pass pawns now on the queen side. The rook activity is there. The knight is holding so far the position. The king is well protected. G takes f4, rook to a7 check, knight to e4, king to e6. Now rook from the first rank to a6, king to e5, and now after rook to a5, Arjun makes now another mistake. He plays now king to d4, actually runs now even into a checkmate pattern. But even if you try something, I don't know, like king to e6, then king to f4, you can deliver maybe one check, but even in this scenario, it's obviously game over here for Arjun. After rook to a5, Arjun played king to d4, and now rook to d7. In this particular position, Arjun resigned because there is a problem of knight to d5 and rook takes d5. It's actually not that you lost a knight, it's actually a beautiful checkmate here in the center of the board. So, the Indian Derby went onto Praggnanandha's side. Deserved win, I would say. From the beginning, Pragg's position was easier to play. Arjun missed somehow, I think, even the opening theory here. But this is tough. I always hated these games to play without the queens on the board. You have to maneuver your minor pieces, search for tiny little problems in your opponent's position. Pragg was better in this tiny little battle and won the game, and is now in the lead of the Tata Steel Masters in 2025 with 2 wins and 1 draw all the first 3 rounds. So great performance by Arjun, by Praggnanandhaa. Great performance so far for him. He gained also many rating points so far. We'll cover one more game, the game between Max Varmedam and Nodirbek Abdulsatorov, which was also an important one because Nodirbek Abdulsatorov is playing also a great event so far. In the first round, I would dare to say, with the black pieces, Nodirbek almost won his game against Praggnanandhaa. It was a tough battle in which Pragg was, I would say, on the losing side, but eventually Nodebek didn't find the best somehow tactical idea, but okay, it was a fair draw. I think in the next couple of rounds we'll see the battle between Praggnanandhaa and Nodebek Abdulsattarov for the first place. So okay, this was the beautiful Indian Derby. Praggnanandhaa won it. If you want to see some other games that we have covered from this event, check out our also a spectacular gameplay by Gukesh against Anish Giri. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.